this discipline, this field, and also we give some example. Particularly, we give 2 examples taken from our daily life. One is about the casino taxation. Another is about smoking penalty. You know, how to punish the smokers in a way to make both the smokers and the non-smokers happy. And now, let's continue our discussion. Let me chat. Are you okay? Okay. Yeah, just check for any possible feedback from you guys, from students. Okay, now let's continue our discussion about the introduction part. As mentioned earlier, we study social welfare. And so this is the subject matter. Let me. Sorry, it's difficult for me to write it. So this is the subject matter for our course. We focus on social welfare. How to do that? We emphasize, we study. So we will explain what we mean by study. Basically, that is, we will make some economic analysis based on economic logic to understand the subject of social welfare. You know, sociologists, they also study social policy and the social welfare consequence or social welfare implication for public social policy. But they take a different approach, different from us. We economists approach the same problem by economic idea, economic analysis. So this is the slide. Another word is about alternative economic situation. As mentioned earlier, this is qualification to qualify the subject. Basically, this course will focus on social welfare and different economic situation. And here, let me emphasize once again, for the study part about how, this is about what to do, we will focus on this, social welfare, how to do it. We take economic approach, economic method, and also we quantify the subject by limiting what we are going to study by the word and economic situation. You know, we could also imagine a different political situation or sociological situation and even military situation. We have different social welfare. But in our course, we focus on economic situation. That is how the situation is defined by economic variables, like income, like inflation, like exchange rate, like taxation policy, like regulation policy, and so on and so forth. So, and now, so let's explain or elaborate each of the 3 keywords. Let me. Okay, and so now let's firstly again focus on the social welfare, the subject matter. That's what we are focusing on. We are focusing on the social welfare. And here, let's separate the two parts of this subject. We study social welfare. Social is one part, another is welfare. Sorry. And as mentioned, explained briefly at the end of last class, we have already pointed out, we have already made this point that social welfare is aggregate. Here, this is the key word. We aggregate everybody's individual welfare. How good, how well you feel about, how well I feel about, how well everybody feel about. Everyone matters. Nobody is nobody. Everyone is somebody. And so this is the key idea. Everyone is somebody. So that is everyone matter. So therefore, every member's welfare is important for the society. But the point is we need to aggregate, we need to put, transform the individual level welfare into a society level. Basically, we change, this is the vector. You know, if we have 1 million people, everybody has welfare. So therefore, for each individual, we give a sort of number to measure how well that person feel about. So therefore, we have 1 million dimension vector. This is a very big vector. We aggregate such vectors into a single number. We aggregate, that is, starting from individual welfare, eventually we come down to social welfare. Basically, we transform a lot of numbers. Each number measure one person in the situation, and we aggregate all such big number of figures into one single figure. We call that aggregate, that's a social welfare. And this aggregation is not arbitrary. You can't do it, you know, in any way you personally like. This must satisfy some sensible property. We must aggregate the individual level welfare into society level welfare in a sensible way. And it's, you know, we must make sense in doing so. And again, we have already introduced this idea. There's a Pareto social welfare. That is, if, for example, you guys' welfare doesn't change, nobody's welfare change except me, but my welfare increase, and then the social welfare should also increase. This is true for everyone. So, you know, everyone matters. If nobody else is worse off, the situation becomes worse. But somebody's situation becomes better, then we claim that's a good thing, that's improvement for the whole society. So therefore, the social welfare will increase. So, you know, this is quite an intuitive idea. And a special case for this general Pareto social welfare function is given by a British economist, Jeremy Bentham. And now we claim this ITE in memory of this guy, this economist. This Bentham style social welfare function is a specific way of formulate to formulate the Pareto social welfare function, we simply sum up my welfare plus your welfare and plus everybody. And we do not give any weight. You can imagine we can give some number to this person's welfare and a different number to another. So therefore, we care both person one and person two, but we may not necessarily care equally about them. Maybe we care more about person two than we care about the person one. But here, the Benson-Meter social welfare function requires us to take everybody equally. All are equal, nobody are more equal. And so now let's start from this point to clarify one concept. And from the basic level economics or intermediate level economics, we have already got familiar to the concept of utility, utility. And now one question naturally comes to mind. Is welfare the same as utility at the individual level? That is, can we equalize individual welfare with individual utility? Are they the same for anybody I? Does welfare equal utility? And here, this is some subtle point, really subtle. But for our purpose in this course, we can simply assume they are roughly the same for practice. For practical purpose, we can treat them as the same thing. But strictly speaking, or theoretically speaking, conceptually speaking, they are not the same. Let me quickly give you an example. For example, smoking or drinking. A lot of teenagers try smoking just for fun. Nothing really seriously wrong about it. Everybody had experience of grow up. And now smoking, for the smokers, some teenagers, they're just a little bit naughty. They try something different. They try to do something really cool, and they try smoking. But eventually, when they smoke more and more, they cannot give up. It's really, really hard to give up smoking. I did, and eventually I gave up. I know how difficult it is. And then, for the smokers, they really enjoy. That is, by smoking, their utility increase. But on the other hand, you can't claim it's also good for their welfare, because in the long term, their health may be somehow damaged. That is hurtful to their welfare, to the long-term health. But for the short-term utility, short-term pleasure, it helps a lot. So this simple example tells us utility maximization is not the same thing as welfare maximization. Another example, a lot of kids abuse a little bit too much oversized for the given age, or too fat, put it shortly. Why? Because probably they enjoy fast food, they enjoy too much chocolate, and they don't like to do too much exercise. And for the short term, the fact they enjoy simply means they care about their utility. Their utility for the moment is somehow maximized. But the parents care about the long-term benefit of being too fat. So again, here we find the two concepts, utility and welfare, as far as, being overfighting is concerned, is somehow divergent. They diverge from each other. They are not the same thing. You can you can imagine or giving more examples to help yourself understand. In many situations, welfare and utility are not the same thing. But and now let's think more carefully about the smoking and overeating matters. And it's true, and to maximize the given person utility is not necessarily the same thing as maximizing her or his welfare. But on the other hand, you may argue they know who they are. So therefore, they just want to enjoy life. Nothing wrong about it. And so therefore, from their perspective, utility is simply equal to welfare. And but so therefore, a lot of debate among economists about utility and welfare. But in general, we believe most people, most times, are rational. Let me emphasize this key idea. We have a basic assumption that people in general are smart enough. They're not crazy. They know what they're doing. They know how to do what in the best interest for themselves. As outside, we can't control. We don't have the right to control what and how they behave. And so therefore, we should simply accept whatever they do if they do not commit any criminal activity. That's their business, not our business. So therefore, we can simply assume, okay, don't worry too much about it. Let's simply assume welfare equal utility at individual level. And for our cost, that's enough. Because our cost will focus on some applied topics, as mentioned earlier in last class, about how to design good policy about taxation, how to design good policy about regulation, and how to solve the externality problem. So therefore, we care more about how to make sense practically about the public policy in the way to improve or to increase the social welfare. So therefore, let me come back to this point. We can simply assume at the individual level, welfare equal utility. And then now, let's put them together. Put my utility or my welfare and your utility, your welfare all together for the whole society. That is, let's focus on this one. And now we can accept, okay, this is a good way to think about a social problem. Everybody matters, okay? This one captures the idea. Everyone matters. If we can make one person better off or one person pleased, happier, and nobody else become worse off, then we should go ahead. We should take action. And let's focus on this class of social welfare function and see what we can learn much about it. And here, let's give some example. Okay, let me. Why did I erase? I need to, okay. I couldn't find the eraser, but anyway, let's continue. And okay, good. And so now let's look at several examples. And so before we go to each of them, let me remind you, and what's behind such different formulation of a social wave function. That's about value system. That's about value judgment. That's about sort of philosophy. Okay, that's really about value system or value judgment, 价值判断. Okay, and that is what we believe, what kind of a society is more desirable, is really good for us. That's about our philosophy. So let's look at each of them. The first one, again, is given by Jeremy Bentham himself. And so here, to simplify our discussion, we consider a very simple society. This society has only two persons, two members. One is individual one, this guy, utility, another, person two. You can easily generalize this two-person society to a more general situation where we have any number n, any number I, much larger number for individuals. It's not a big deal, but for our discussion throughout, we consider only two-person society. And sometimes we can interpret person one as class one, person two as class two. For example, this is working class. Okay, low income people, low income class. Sorry, this is middle or high income people, or high income class, rich people, poor people. So, so that is, we can literally interpret the two-person story as a two-class story. It's quite easy. So another example is we give some weight we call alpha. Alpha is a number taken from between 0 and 1. And 1 minus alpha is the weight we attach to the welfare of a second person, person 2. So that is, if alpha equals 0, what does that mean? That means this term is always equal to 0. So that is, person 1 simply doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We do not care about him at all. And when alpha equals 0, this number becomes 1. So that is only person 2 matter. So therefore, you can imagine if we increase the value for alpha, alpha become bigger and bigger. From 0, gradually approaching 1, then we care more and more about person 1, and less about person 2. So this is the so-called weighted Bentham social welfare function. And let me give you an example about how to make sense of such a function. And again, just interpret 1 as the whole class of workers, person 2 as the whole class of a capitalist. Okay, this is the working class, basically poor people. This is the capitalist, the managers, the bosses. This is the rich people. And I believe everybody heard about the, the leftist and the rightist, 左翼, 右翼. So basically, the left-wing thinking care more about the poor people. The rightist thought care more about person to the rich people, the high-income people. You know, this is a little bit overstating about left and right-wing thought, but in general, it's true. By giving different weight to the welfare of different classes, we target on the audience, on the different voters. And this is particularly true over the course of a political election. And just think about the Republic and the Democratic Party in the United States. You know, every 4 years, they spend billions of dollars on the campaign, on the election. And basically, by voting different candidates, the person chose different policy to reflect the value of alpha and 1 minus alpha. So therefore, this is a very simple way to formulate social welfare by giving different ways to different people. But that simple way make a lot of sense in understanding what's going on in the street, what's going on in reality. Okay, another example is given by this person, John Nash. You know, I believe everybody had heard about Nash equilibrium. So this Nash is that Nash. John Nash is basically a mathematician, but he published several extremely important papers in game theory and in economics in 1950s, and eventually he got 1 Nobel Prize for his contribution to games and to game theory and economics. And in the middle of the 1950s, he published a paper about bargaining. You know, we do a lot of bargaining in the market. He tried to formulate, develop a general powerful theory about the bargaining. And in that paper, he mentioned one idea, that is, in the bargaining process, eventually, the people care about this. How much gain, how much benefit I can get from the bargaining, how much benefit you can get. By bargaining, we maximize the product of my utility and your utility. And later on, welfare economists apply this idea to understand social welfare. In memory of John Nash, we call this is John Nash. Sometimes we call nation, IAN, nation social welfare function. And now, if you compare this one with this one, you may find they pretty much like brothers, very similar to each other, because if you take a log, or for this formula, you may find this become log U1 plus log U2. Sorry. Okay, and now if you take this term altogether as a new utility function, and this is the new utility function for person 2, then to maximize Nash social welfare function value is to maximize the sum of this term plus the sum of this term, but that is precisely Bank-Schmidt social wave function. But for any given utility function, we can make whatever monotonic monotonic transformation, and increasing and monotonic transformation of the given utility function is still a utility function. So therefore, by such simple knowledge in economics, we can argue that the Nash idea is simply another version, is equivalent to the Bank-Schmidt. So therefore, the Nash idea is not that new at all. But anyway, in economics, particularly in welfare economics, we still call this way of formulating social welfare by the name of a Nash. But actually, they're the same. Another one, this one is quite different. This one is very different from whatever in the above. And this idea is introduced by another John. Let me emphasize this guy. John Rawls. He published a book. I have the book at hand. Let me check. It's pretty big book, nearly 600 pages. And this book is the most important book in political philosophy, 政治哲学. Okay, he's the most important political philosopher in 20th century. And that book is the most important book in that field, political philosophy in 20th century. And why this person is relevant to our course. In that book, he introduced a very important idea, and let me put here. This is his central probably some of you heard about it. Sorry, it's really hard. It's very hard for me to write. So the basic idea is we don't know what may happen in the future. We are ignorant about the future. Sorry. So therefore, we face the same problem. Nobody knows, nobody is sure about what's going to happen to yourself tomorrow or next year in the future. So therefore, when we design any social welfare policy, because of this, everybody faces this trouble, this problem. And nobody knows what may happen tomorrow, what may happen in the future. So therefore, we face the fundamental ignorance problem. And Given such ignorance, this ignorance is true to everybody, to the whole society. So therefore, everybody has good reason to imagine what happens if I'm the most miserable person, I'm the most unlucky person. For example, think about the COVID-19. A couple of weeks ago, we have the all the members living in a society had to take the test. This is a simple example, because nobody knows whether or not you will be affected. You will be affected by this, coronavirus, if the virus is not under control. So everybody has a chance to get into big trouble. And so therefore, what can we do? We must design the policy in the way to care about the most unlucky person. That is the minimal level of quality of life for among person 1, person 2. This is for 2-person society. For bigger number for member society like Macau, we have roughly 3/4 million individuals. Among the 3/4 million people, let's think about how to care about the minimum level of all of them. That is, sorry, the most miserable person, because such bad luck can strike at anybody. Anybody has a good chance to get into big trouble. So this is the so-called ignorance. We simply don't know about the future. Given that we don't know, we must be honest. We don't know. And given that we don't know, what can we do? Let's make sure, even if any of us get into such big trouble, really big trouble, that's a tragedy. That's big, that's a big disaster for that person, and also for his or her family. So therefore, let's care about that person. Focus on this person to so-called maximize minimum. This is the idea. If you look at the literature, sometimes you may find this term. It's very cool. Maximize or minimize. What does that mean? The key idea comes from John Rawls. He argued we should identify among all the possibilities in the future. When we take action, when we design social or economic or political policy, let's identify what's the possible worst. And then we maximize this number. So that is, even if you or I get into trouble, our life quality become pretty low. Let's maximize that number, to reduce the worst scenario as far as we can. So that's the key idea. How to formulate? That is, let's care about the minimal value for all the individual utilities. So, and if you check mathematically about this social wave function, with this property, and this property, you may find the so-called Rosen social wave function doesn't satisfy this property, because Okay, because this function is not differentiable. You can't calculate the first order derivative. Okay, this function 不可以求导. Okay, in general we can't, but that doesn't matter, and this is very special case. And in the future, we will argue not from mathematical perspective, but from economic perspective. This is some a special way of formulating a sort of Pareto. Sometimes we call it quasi-Pareto. And so for the moment, some really careful students may be worried about the consistency between John Ross and Pareto idea. So don't worry too much about it. In the future, we will engage into more detailed economic discussion about the relationship between the two social welfare functions. Okay, still another one. And so far, just recall what you have learned in the intermediate macroeconomics and about utility function. We usually put utility function in such a way. And let me. Oh, thank you. Thank you for your suggestion. And now, so let me give me a couple minutes. Let me check here. So back to the intermediate macroeconomics, I believe you spend a lot of time study this. Sorry. How to maximize the utility given the budget constraint, price of goods X, price of goods Y, and income. So in doing so, we simply assume how good you feel about comes from how much you consume. Okay, and how much you consume depends on how rich you are. So therefore, this is a sort of a function of so it's very difficult for me to write. You know, this is what we learn from intermediate macroeconomics. And maximize the value for utility for each consumer is depending on income and the market prices. So this part is coming from the market, the environment. So therefore, the consumer cannot control this part. The consumer can control this part. If you work hard, you have more money. If you are lazy, you have less. And that's right. If you are capable, very able person, you can have high income. Otherwise, you have average income, you know, so on and so forth. So here, that's a normal way of talking about utility function. But now, let's increase the utility function a little bit. And that is how good you feel about not only depend on how rich you are, how much money you have, but also you depend on how you care about the inequality. You know, sometimes when you find somebody is really, really poor, they have really, really miserable life. Naturally, we are very, you know, sympathetic. We feel so sad. We feel very bad. You know, it's not fair. I have so much money, you have so little. And so therefore, the inequality itself hurts you, make you feel so bad. So therefore, our utility or our welfare not only depends on money, but also depend on the social situation, the inequality. And sometimes we feel the other way around. You know, if you find some people much richer than you, you feel sad, okay? And or if you find some other people's income below your income, okay, you feel good. It's also nature. That's one part of human nature. You know, we are humanity. That's one part of who we are. So anyway, inequality itself also directly change the value of utility. So therefore, another way to formulate social welfare is at the individual level, we do something, we change it in a way to reflect the reality. We care not only our own consumption, but also the inequality. The inequality could be inequality in income, could be inequality in ranking, could be inequality in consumption. Okay, for example, if you find all your friends travel very much internationally to Paris, to New York, to London, to Tokyo in the summer, and then you feel bad because you didn't. Okay, that's a kind of inequality in consumption. And if you go, you know, went to one wonderful place, but nobody else did it, sometimes you feel pleasure, okay? You have some secret pleasure you will not share with a friend, but you know you are happy. So that means inequality can change our utility in many ways. So therefore, we can take into account this factor, this measure into utility. So again, this is about how to change the utility at the individual level. And so therefore, let me continue. So this is about this part. We spend a lot of time elaborate and clarify what we mean by social welfare. Basically, we aggregate the So we aggregate an individual level welfare into society level. This is the social welfare. And then now, let's quickly go to another keyword, study. And we will not spend much time on to discuss this term because that's what we are going to do. We are going to study. The idea is we will not keep talking about it. We analyze, we make analysis, we make a rigorous formulation in economic or scientific term. We make use of concepts plus analysis plus logical reasoning to formulate our ideas about social welfare. And so this is study. Another term, alternative, and we have already, discussed several examples, particularly the two examples about optimal casino taxation and optimal smoking penalty in Macau. So this is about if we have different situation, and particularly if we have different choice among public policy, we can make assessment. Which policy, which choice is better, is even the best. So, and now, let's quickly emphasize another interesting point just to give you a much much broader, much general, more, much broader perspective to understand where we stand now, where we are when we study welfare economics. Welfare economics can be sensibly understood as one part or one branch or one application of macroeconomics. And so therefore, we will apply the basic logic for this discipline to understand social welfare. What does that mean? Probably you heard about this term, economic imperialism. So that is, this term has good reputation and equally bad reputation. That depends on who you are. Many economists enjoy the idea because economic science is powerful enough to imperialize other social sciences, but non-economists in general, they hate it. They don't welcome. And what's the idea? The basic idea is economics should be the queen of all social sciences because economics is powerful. So therefore, we can colonize other non-economic social sciences, like part of sociology, part of political sciences, and legal science, 法科 is law, the study of the law. If we have time, I will shortly give you 2 examples about how economists actually did that. Some people did it so well, they changed the world and changed the policy. And now, why economics is so powerful? Why economists can be such colonizer, imperialist, 经济学帝国主义. You know, imperialism is a very bad word. You take advantage, you bully other people, basically. But in terms of sciences, physicists, 物理学家, they did the same thing to many other disciplines. The physics imperialism, they have good reputation. But in social sciences and economics, probably it's most scientific discipline. One example is we do have a sort of Nobel Prize for economics, but no such prize for political sciences, for sociology, for law study, because for many people, such disciplines are simply not scientific enough, much less scientific compared to economics. And why economics is so powerful? Mainly because this part, macroeconomics. So therefore, the so-called economic imperialism, basically a macroeconomic, has nothing to do with macro MAC, only to do with MIC. And why is it so powerful? And Edward Lazar, he died a couple years ago. He's one of leading economists for many years. And he was the chair of the Economic Advisory Committee for President George W. Bush. And then he worked in Stanford, one leading institute for many years, but a couple years ago, he died. Otherwise, He would be quite competitive for Nobel Prize. And anyway, he published article. This article published in this year, this is end and the turning point of 2 centuries. And so the choice of the year of publishing this article is intended, is well planned. This journal was edited by the Harvard economists. They published purposely on this year to, just for debate. And once published, is very influential. In this paper, Lisa argue why economics so powerful, because we have 3 important ideas, 3 important methods. And so given that we are powerful, we can destroy, we can take whatever problem we have in social, political, and economic life. The first one is the individualist. We start from individual level. For example, here, in our class, we focus on this. We care about the social welfare. And where does social welfare come from? It comes from you and me. It comes from each individual. So therefore, the starting point is individual welfare. And where the individual welfare come from? So here, everybody's welfare comes from your choice. Why do you what you do? And why do you take the precise way you did it? Because that's the best way to do it for yourself. So therefore, behind the individual welfare is individual's rational choice. We are not stupid. We are not crazy. We know what we are doing. We allocate our resource in such a way to maximize our utility of welfare. So therefore, what's behind the individual welfare is we believe every individual matters. That's point 1. Secondly, we believe every individual is making rational choice. He or she is not stupid. He or she is not crazy. He's making rational choice. Given the 2 points altogether, okay, then we claim that's sort of individualist methodology. We start from individual choice. This is something quite different from sociology. And in general, they don't take this approach. But for economists, we do, particularly in the macroeconomics. We start from individual choice, individual consumer, individual producer, okay, individual seller, individual businessman or businesswoman. He tried to pursue self-interest in the rational way. So this is one part. At the individual level, we know how to formulate the benefit and the cost. And another one, we know how to analyze the interaction. This is the key word. Interaction. Let me emphasize this point. In economics, we talk a lot about equilibrium. What's equilibrium? Equilibrium is basically means physicists also talk about equilibrium, but they mean something completely different from what we economists mean by equilibrium. Equilibrium means interaction. At the individual level, consumers maximize utility and then make a decision about how much or for what to buy. And the producers make a decision to maximize profit and decide on what and how much to sell. Then we put them together. You sell, I buy, and another person buy, another person sell. So therefore, we are competing. We are interacting. It's not enough to consider one individual person's choice. We must consider everybody's choice. But the trouble is, when we are making choice, we are making such a choice in the context. That is, we are interacting. Your choice have influence on my choice. My choice also has influence on your choice. How to understand such a complex story? We have a powerful way we call equilibrium. So sometimes when we put the idea into the context of a buying and selling, we call this market equilibrium. Okay, but equilibrium could be something different, not necessarily in the buying and selling sense. But overall or in general, we do have such powerful idea to describe how the people, each of them as the individual, is making rational choice. But eventually they come up with overall solution for the whole society. That solution captures the idea for interaction between a numerous number of people. Think about Macau. Macau is not a big city, still nearly 1 million people. We are interacting every day with each other, basically through the market. You can't stop buying for one single day. You have to survive. You buy, the lunch, you buy some whatever, stationery every day. You take a bus, you buy service, okay? You go to 7-Eleven, you buy drink and food. And in doing so, you are intersecting with other members in the society. You can imagine this is a very, very, very complicated story, but we have a simple way to solve it. We call equilibrium. And again, usually other social sciences, they don't have such powerful concept. Still, it's not end story. After we solve the problem about the overall interaction, we still have another idea. At the individual level, everybody is a rational choice maker. At the society level, we have interaction, and still we have something more significant to see. We can design policy in a scientific way. Why? Because we have a criterion. We know how to measure the efficiency. We have some, theoretical foundation to help us to see whether or not such overall interaction is good or bad. If it's good, then let it be. Let it be. We do not need to do anything about it. If the overall interaction or the equilibrium is bad means not good enough, then let's change it. Let's change it in a way to improve such a situation, such overall interaction. So we have a good way that come social welfare, basically. We have such powerful idea. We can use social welfare to measure whether or not such equilibrium is good. Okay, so let me quickly give you 2 examples about why and how economists change other social sciences. And in the paper given by Eddie Lizer, he gives several examples. But let me, I have already put the paper into the Moodle, and the paper is not easy to read. I read it quite many years ago. And so if some of you do have difficulty reading the paper, don't worry, just give up. It's not a big deal. But I still encourage you to go as far as you can. It's really very rewarding reading process. You can learn much. I guarantee, I promise. You can really learn much if you can follow his argument. But if you do have difficulty, don't worry, probably you have not learned enough in economics at the moment. And okay, and now let's quickly give 2 examples. One example is about public choice and political science. Public choice is one part of our course, but we will not go very far. Public choice is a big literature developed by some Virginia economists, Virginia School, 弗吉尼亚学派. Okay, 2 big economists. One is James Buchanan. He got a Nobel Prize for his contribution to public choice. Another is Gordon Tullock. And so the basic idea is they apply the 3 things are together. The 3 theories, 3 concepts are completely coming from economics. It's entirely economics products. And they apply this idea to study political science. Their basic argument is like this. When you think about political science or political life, you are dealing with something completely different from business, from market. But they argue that's not really true. They argue political science can be understood as exchange. Sorry. In the sense, in the political life, we citizens, we vote, or we cast voting, and we vote which guy, is the better choice for the president. And then the person who are elected will make the public service for 4 years. And then they argue that's exchange process because we pay tax. As a taxpayer, we buy the service from the people we call politicians. They are sellers. They are selling service. We are buyers. We are buying service. What's the price? Tax. So therefore, tax is the price of the public service. And also, if we are not happy, we can terminate the deal. Either vote him out 4 years later, or if we are really angry about the quality of a service, we can terminate the contract before the president finish up the 4-year term. We can, go to the Congress. We can go to the Congress, and then the people will make a decision to get the bad president out. So this is kind of exchange. But when we have exchange, we know we are dealing with economics. So in this sense, political life can be, that's a key word, can be. Certainly you can take a different perspective. but nothing wrong for taking this exchange perspective to understand political life. So this is the central idea of public choice. And so by doing that, the public choice economists made a revolution about political science. And then now this school of economy have been already very much influential. They changed the political life. Another legal science, and probably we are running for time. Next class, we will quickly finish up this point. You know, when you think about the law give us some basic, instruction about what you can do, what you can't. And if you do something wrong, illegal, you will be punished. That's the general way of thinking about the law. So law, why do we need a law? Because the law provides justice, 正义. Okay, that's, sometimes we call it's a science about the justice, not about the efficiency. This is the general way of understanding law. But some economists disagree. And eventually, by disagreeing the mainstream understanding of what and how law system help society, they make another revolution about the law. Usually we call law and economics. Again, we will discuss in more detail. Otherwise, you cannot learn anything from my short talk on this point. And before you go, let me summarize. And we still have some example. We have already looked at taxation, regulation. You can read it by yourself. I will not repeat it. And one particular point is about how to control, the housing market booming problem in Macau. And this is a new policy introduced by Macau authority a couple years back. And this is one way to regulate the property market. And another example is about public goods. Again, you can read it. I don't need to repeat it. And still another, again, public good externality. And also next class, we will spend a couple minutes to connect this topic with this one. How to make sense, as example, the smoking regulation or smoking penalty as one illustrating case to understand social welfare function. We will do that in next class. So before you go, some students have already left. Do you have any question or any comments to make? It's okay? I'm sorry, I hope we can quickly resume that, the normal teaching activity in the classroom, as will give us much better facility and opportunity to interact, to discuss more lively and more lovely in the classroom. Okay, if you don't have any question, that's end for today's class. See you coming Friday. Okay, bye-bye. Anyone? Okay. Bye-bye. Okay, thank you. And okay, see you. If you have any feedback, please do let me know. I'm still learning like you. I don't know how to control the machinery. I'm very bad learner. Okay. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.